Hello, this is LibertyReAwaken with my YouTube video number 5 titled Fascism in America Today. So what I always thought, what caught my interest is that the far left calls people on the far right fascist and Nazi fascists. So then I started to look into that and it totally didn't make sense. So then I educated myself for these political terms and what it means to be on the spectrum and how it doesn't make any sense. And it requires a little bit more thought than that because it's our political ambitions and what we value are complicated. So to put it on a single line started to not make sense when I looked at this. So Nazi is short, it was created by the Germans, and it's short for National Socialist. So when I go to the Wikipedia page, it says Nazi is a socialist party which practiced fascism. So I was thinking, well, that doesn't make any sense. Socialism's on the far left end of the spectrum, but you're claiming that it's on the far right because it's fascist. So from the beginning, I could see that there was some discontinuity in the speech that they were using, and so now it's kind of a pet peeve when people say, "Oh, they're fascist." Well, it's like, what's interesting is that they're relating very small amount of terms because it is National Socialist. It's Nazi in Germany. So what's that mean for America today? So backing up just a step, I think that the Nolan Chart is the best because we are about to see why the linear perspective on politics doesn't make any sense. If it's saying it's socialist and then, which is Nazis practiced fascism. So the left is the right is what they were saying. So that didn't make any sense, and we're about to see that a little bit more throughout this discussion. So fascism and fascists believe in a militaristic nationalism, so that they believed in the power and the strength of their country and total faith in that, and then to be able to certainly to defend that. So America does that a bit. We certainly have the most powerful military in the world, and we're constantly investing in spending billions of dollars when we could spend things elsewhere, but we definitely have the strongest military in the world. And we spend, let me tell you this, I was deployed to Kuwait for 9 months, and I looked at their budget and it was like $3 billion is how much Kuwait spent on their military. And I looked, and that's how much we spent on one of our B-2 bombers. So I thought that their whole military budget was the same as one of our planes. So that just helps put things in perspective. The U.S. has the most powerful military. We do the best training. We got the best equipment, and we're spending a lot of money on military things. In case you weren't aware of that the numbers are out there and it is large. So they also oppose outright democracy. They believe in natural social, fascism does, it believes in a natural social hierarchy and the rule of the elites, that there are people who should be running things, and that then those people can select who's going to be in charge, but that not everybody has the education or knowledge or the right to democracy as we enjoy in America. And they say ultimately that therefore the individual interests are subordinate to the state. So there's the elite people that are running the state, and that everybody should be focused on just supporting the state and what that defines. And so, that the individuals are subordinate to the personal interest to the common good. And I feel like that's a phrase that the left uses a lot in society, is that, oh, well, it's for the better good. That, yeah, these people are going to be having their liberties or their taxes taken from them. This business is going to be taxed at a higher rate for the greater good. They can afford to give up their money for something, and we're going to do that so that we can do something better with it than they would themselves, which is not how the economy and money works, by getting the government involved in that. But that's what they say, and that's what we hear the left say a lot, and we also hear the fascists. The fascists used to say that, which this National Socialist fascists would say that it's for the common good. And so fascists also believe in liberalism and the idea that the government is responsible for protecting citizens from harming each other. So that kind of sounds like a left-leaning thing, doesn't it? That that we don't have the right to, they want to take away our right to self-protection in our guns because you can rely on the state to do that. And there's all sorts of rules and laws, and for every thing that is built. It used to be buyer beware, and the individual responsible for the things that they bought and used, and if they got injured, that was their fault. But now a business, when they're creating something, has to put warning tags all over it, because now the business is responsible for how the individual uses that. And that's what fascists believe. That was one of their tenets, was that the government's responsible for protecting citizens from each other. So that was one of their tenets. And then something else that they did fascist is that they use scientific racism. So they were trying to measure people's heads and come up with this data for how some races are better than others. And then that's where it ties back to somehow the far right gets associated with that. I mean, Democrats were in charge of the KKK, but somehow now, and they believe in what other kind of scientific enforcement do they use today? Oh, climate change? Well, let me tell you this. Climate change 100% is true, and it's been happening throughout history. That's just how the climate works. But the amount of proof that it is caused by humans is 0%. They do not have any proof, and they're trying to come up with data all the time. And when data does get published, there was a few years ago, the ICCC, their huge report, the International Climate Change Committee, or something like that, that all their data was fake. And so the way they're interpreting the data to prove their point has been turned out to be false a lot. And so fascists used to do that with determining which race is best, and now we can see the left doing that with climate data to prove that it's related to humans, but there is no proof that climate change is related because of humans. So I'm just saying, I'm trying to draw lines there because they're using science to prove their point, but you can make data to support anything with enough time and resources. You can do tests to support anything that you want to support, and it's not absolute of ideology, that the climate information is driven by this climate change, even though there's no proof of it. So, moving on. So Republicans, the far left calls Republicans fascists because they believe in social conservatism. So part of the tenets of fascism, was that the elites, like I said, and so conservatives believe in that too, in social hierarchies, that we need to protect that, and that if people have the right to work hard, and when they earn money or they earn objects, that they have the right to keep it, but then that creates hierarchies because some people have more than others, and so then the left associated fascists with that because Republicans wanted to let people keep their property, and then these hierarchies are created because some people work harder, some people smarter, some people are more athletic, and then the far left attacked them and called them Republicans fascists because they want to protect those, but that's not accurate. But I think that's the line that they create, and to have those defined values. The Republicans typically are very religious, not very, but have a religious background, and left sees the right as that being fascist because they have a set of values that they're living by, I think, is the connection that they're making. So moving along is that the Bill of Rights define the things that every person in society is responsible for just by being a member of the human race. So it's like it evens the playing field, and then so you got the pursuit of happiness. So we all have to treat each other, not violate each other, and then we can work from there, and that's the best for creating society. But now what they try to do, politicians, they also try to attach a system for how people should use those rights. There's free speech. Well, people shouldn't say free speech is wrong in some cases if you say the wrong thing. Okay, but you have the right to free speech, and when they start to go in for how you should use that speech, then they're attaching values that you shouldn't disrespect people or this or that. Then that system of values gets installed in politics, in the government, and the law, and then you're starting to control your population, and that's where it starts to go downhill. So the linchpin to understanding the key problems that the current American discourse has is a groupthink that the government is responsible for people's behavior and the values they have, and needs to do a better job of enforcing that, and that the government is responsible for the individual or the group's actions, and that we need to define that, and so that way people don't do the wrong thing or use the rights incorrectly. So people are allowed to use the rights however they want as long as they don't violate other people's rights, but they want to shape that more. They want people to act a certain way and not do things that are offensive or what they deem as offensive. So that's where it's at, talking about the left side. And so to add values to these rights. And so what the Founding Fathers did is they put a cap on this by defining the separation of church and state. And so they said that because a person's beliefs, they should not use the government to force those beliefs on somebody else. Separation of church and state. Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be a defined religion. You can have personal beliefs and try to enforce those on other people, to have other people live by those same beliefs, and that's wrong, because that's covered in the separation of church and state, that you should not use the government to do that. You should let that person go about their business as they wish. That's the definition of separation of church and state. So if you believe in something, if it's not religious, then you shouldn't be forcing it on other people, and that's why they made that. It's not just for Catholics or Jews or Muslims. It's not the religion and beliefs beyond that, but beyond what is defined in the Bible, religious aspects in that sense. So to manifest the most out of human ambition is to set an even playing field, which is what the Ten Commandments or the Bill of Rights does. You know, everybody will get along if we all have these same rights, where we're not violating each other as behavior or hurting each other, that we're not working against each other. And then humans, therefore, with that even playing field, that then humans are good nature. We will work together as we're doing the best for ourselves, that then we'll team up and we'll produce the most. And that's the best way to do it, is to have an even playing field for all, and then and not try to define what values are better than others, because then there starts to be clash, and then liberties are gone, and then the society becomes less progressive. That's why we've seen communism fall and fascism fall, because they try to do that, and then people don't like that. People want to be able to have their own individual liberties and rights to do as they wish. And you can't define somebody's values for them, because you don't know what's best for them. Individuals know what's best for themselves and their families, and they can live by that. And that's just what's best for humans. So I'm libertarian because libertarians believe in the power of the individual for propelling human race forward with the ever increasing standard of living. So fascism, it has a lot of similarities to the left. It's got a few similarities to the right, but I think it's misused a lot and misunderstood. And so definitely Nazi. If someone calls somebody else a Nazi and it's a National Socialism, fascist, left, right, I think maybe I'll do an episode on the Nolan Chart, because that makes it a square of the matter, so that way you can better understand how much government is involved in the things we do go about in society. I'm libertarian because I think that the government should do less, and the way the Constitution written is great, because it evens the playing field for all, and we move from there. But to have more laws in place to define what values we should have, or the way we speak, or the way we use those values, that's where it's wrong. And that's what fascism did. That's what the left's trying to do. The right does it to an extent, so that's why I don't consider myself to be Republican, because they also try to do that with other things I'll get to in another video. But that's it. I think that libertarians do the best job of protecting the individual's liberties and rights, and that is what's best for increasing our standard of living, and for the human race to be most prosperous, wealthy, healthy, and determined. Thanks.